All right, all right, all right. Welcome everyone to another episode with the Four Elements. I am your boy Earth.
And I'm water.
I'm fire.
And a wind.
All right, tonight we're gonna have an interesting show. Because we hear this term thrown around. Your body is a temple. My body is a temple. All this temple. We hear it all the time. Because I always say we are the kings and queens of what? Cliche. We've turned that into a cliche, a total cliche. Now, you know how I do. I'm a definition dude. That's what I am. I like the meaning of things. So to make sure that we're using, and for me also, I'm using words and phrases or whatever in their proper context, right? So first, I am going to read the definition of a temple. It is an edifice or place dedicated to the service or worship of a deity or deities. And by the way, fire, I got this from dictionary.com. I didn't get it from Wiki, just for you. Is that good? We good on that one? All right. So now I just want to start there and go around with the elements. And I want to ask you, what do you think of, or what is your view of the body being a temple? And based upon that definition, is your body a temple?
All right. I'll answer those in back the reverse order. No, according to that definition, my body is not a temple. I think of it as when I think of it as I treat my body well. And well or good, how people treat their body is different for different people. Some people think that their body's a temple because they practice yoga. Some people think it is because they work out and they really, really take care of themselves. I can say that I do. You guys know I used to be vegan. I'm pescatarian now. I work out 5 days a week, 7 days a week sometimes, but still, like, I'm not worshiping a deity. I'll, I'll be honest. But before you actually read that definition and before you asked me that way, I did think that my body was the temple. So you just ruined it for me, Earth. Thank you.
Hey, you know me. It's all about the knowing. All right. Who else? I'm listening. I'm wide open. And I know, I'm going to tell you something. Everybody, I'm sure, is on fire to hear what fire has to say. I'm just saying. I am just saying.
Well, actually, this is for me. The definition is aligned with my occurrence of what a temple is. And so if I'm keeping it a buck, as Water said, no, I don't I don't be as though my body is a temple most of the time, quite frankly. However, I will say this: my soul says that it is, and I haven't consecrated it as such. I don't really use that cliche, but it's in my consciousness because it's out there. Um, and I aspire to get to a place where I live a life as if my body is a temple of God. And because if we talking about the oughtness of how one should live themselves, we're not talking about moderation, we're not talking about propaganda, we're not talking about the results of marketing and consumption and pleasure, and all these things. That my highest consciousness knows that my body is a temple, but my being, with regards to my body, is not aligned with my highest consciousness. I'm complete.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with fire. You know, I may not necessarily 100% function in reality as if my body is a temple. However, deep down, I do believe that my body is, in fact, a temple. I don't necessarily subscribe to dictionary.com or Wikipedia or any other of those sources. I do believe that my body is the house, is the temple of the spirit and soul of God Himself. And that's what I believe. When I go to a funeral or when I see a dead body, I am absolutely clear that the body is a capsule of the spirit and soul. And so that's just how I see it.
Nice. So you said something interesting. And what another thing that we're doing, we always do, amongst being the kings and queens of cliches, is we add on definitions. We add on we add meaning. A definition is a definition. Like we can't say the definition of a house is a place in which you dwell that supports you, and however it supports you, blah blah blah, and then turn around and say it's not that, or that it's something else, or add something else onto it. If we start doing that, then language is really useless in society. I totally get what you're saying when, and I would ask that you reconsider how the word temple is being used based upon its definition and what it actually means, not what we may want it to mean, or we kind of say, okay, this fits me, this fits my narrative, because we do that in our culture, especially in the West, all the time. We take things and this fits my narrative. Let me tweak it this way, this way. Oh, that's perfect. And we never have a clear definition of anything at all. But and so this is really great, because even if we went to the elementals and asked, what's your definition of a temple? I promise you they will all have something different. And even after I read the textbook definition of it, it's just what it is. So I would just request that you reconsider and say, possibly, just possibly, I'm throwing this out there, I'm making all this up. That is certainly not.
Yeah, I can see your vantage point, but that would beg to inquire as to the definition of worship and to revel.
Mm-hmm.
What is it? What does it mean to worship, and what's sacred? Like as we go back to is sex sacred?
Mm-hmm. And so which is really good. We can say, so if we begin to really look at the definition of it, right? We can actually say sacred is, and we didn't have time to really get into this part of it. It's like you can say that something is what it is, and it could be true for you. It could be totally valid for you. But in the grand scheme of the reality that we live in, is that validated? Because the validation of it in the grand scheme of the cultural context we live in actually means more than, possibly it means more than what we may think it means based upon the definition we give it, or we say it is because I say so. Well, you can say you're something, and if the world itself or society itself doesn't agree with that, then what? Someone can say, for prime example, Fire could say, oh, I'm a professional athlete. And we know his background, so we know he's made it there. But if he never made it past the collegiate ranks, is he in the reality we live in? Is he actually that, or is he that for himself? And which one makes the biggest difference in how he navigates through life?
I get that. You know, when you talk like this, you know, it reminds me of when Bill Clinton was being impeached. He said, "It depends what the definition of is." And when he said that, I was dying laughing.
Right.
And I mean, and that argument is certainly valid, you know. But and I get that, you know, culture, you know, evolves, right? But I would argue that there are some cultural definitions and frameworks that you hold on to that you would not necessarily want to evolve until what we see like in 2022. I mean, just because the culture is what it is in 2022 doesn't mean that it's the most valid definition.
But it's the definition that we have, right? And I get what you're saying, but it's the definition that we have.
It's one of many.
Right. Water is wet until somebody can prove it's not wet.
Right.
So
I can vouch for that statement. Oh man, I had to interrupt. I had to interrupt y'all with a little comedy, man. Because what are we talking about? Look at Fire. Look at Fire. Fire is like dozing off over there, man. Wake up, Fire. Like, what are we talking about, guys? We're talking about the definition of definition.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
Why? Why?
The definition of is.
Dude, you guys have this clickbait title that says "Is your body your temple?" and we're talking about is the definition of definition really definition? So I have to. So is that
you
what
study philosophy?
I have a degree. I have a degree in philosophy, but this isn't a show where we tell people we're going to deliver philosophical truths and untruths. But I digress. Earth, back to what you were back to your soliloquy here. Let me let you.
So this is where I'm going, right? We can say, and I'm sure that many people will say, and I'm not sure how many, that, oh yeah, my body is a temple. And if that is your view, then I argue whether or not it's a temple today. Has it ever been desecrated? The moment you begin to desecrate something, it's not that anymore, it's something else. Totally. And then even after you've desecrated, what have you done to restore it? And that goes beyond because I say so. Way beyond that one. So I'm looking at this from the perspective of like, how do we actually view? That's why I asked you guys, how do you like temple? Look at the definition. And so put the definition aside and look at and view it. You know, it kind of falls into this thing of sacredness, but we talked about that, but you know, just based on how we view sacredness in our society, right? It falls into this arena of sacredness. Sacredness is minus desecration. The moment something is desecrated, it's not sacred. So then the reality is your body a temple? Not was it a temple? Remember the question. Not was it, not somebody told me it was, not none of that. Is it one?
So yeah, I'll
hold on, Earth. Hold on. I was gonna say elementals. While we pontificate upon Earth's little question here. How about you all do the same and pop that in the comments? We want to make this interactive. So how about elementals? You all answer his question as well. Go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, when I was a shorty. No,
Some
seriously.
undefined. That means some undefined points in history.
Exactly. Could have been yesterday, right? No, but seriously, you know, you know, of course, when we're younger, for sure, you know, we are absolutely unconscious unless we're exposed to certain things and we experience certain things. And so, you know, the way I have desecrated my body is not eating appropriately, you know, sleeping with multiple women that I shouldn't have been sleeping with, you know, and doing all sorts of crazy stuff, you know. But now that I'm an older gentleman, a little bit more wiser, a little bit more conscious, you know, I steer away from, for the most part, bad foods, and I definitely steer away from horrible women.
Horrible women, huh?
Wow.
Wow. Hold on. When? So we're getting to the definitions. What's the definition of a horrible woman?
Someone who acts other than themselves.
Got it. Okay, got it. Got it.
Someone who misbehaves on a frequent basis.
Fire.
I mean, I don't know where we go from here, but but I will say this, right? About 300. Somebody fact check me. There's about 330 billion cells that get replaced on a daily basis in the body, and many scientists believe that it takes approximately 7 to 10 years for the body to be anew or to be renewed. This idea of the isness of the body being a temple as a constant state, to that I say, absolutely not. But that doesn't take away from the fact that that the body as a temple is an aspirational pursuit. And it is one that if we're conscious and cognizant of that pursuit of the body being a temple, then we would all probably lead healthier lives. I'm willing to bet my firstborn that would be the case. So I don't want to debate or argue whether the body is or isn't a temple, but I am present to the reality that my day-to-day living lifestyle choices, I'm not always mindful of that pursuit within my own self. So
Got it.
hopefully we can go somewhere with that because
Otherwise, we're just lost. Earth is giving us no direction. So back to defining definition. Yeah. No, I like what Fire said. So Earth, you wanna take that, or you want me to? What are we doing here?
No, I'll take it. It's very. So you said something very interesting. You said the body. You have some X billions of cells in our bodies, right? And they repair themselves allegedly daily. Now, the reason I say allegedly is because we actually get to determine how that works. What you ingest determines how that works. Determines the restoration. And it's going down. You're going down the road where I was going. So this is perfect. It was like, how do you restore if your body has been desecrated? How do you restore it so that it functions as a temple? And if you're not ingesting things that promote the restoration of it, this is one way, then it's not going to happen. Over a 7-year period, all your cells are, it's not going to happen at all. And it leads to disease and sickness and blah, blah, blah when your body isn't functioning as a temple. being that, you know, the United States is the sickest country in the world, there's a lot of disrepair physically that's happening, that's at work. So that's one way. So good. I mean, I like your point, Fire, because that's actually the direction I was going in. It's like, how do you restore that? If it is, and we don't, a lot, what you just mentioned, I promise you, most of the people have no clue about, and or consider the restoration of cells. I ain't no restoration of a cell, the creation of new cells, because both need to exist. Because some cells are beyond repair, some can be repaired.
See, it's an empowered place to work from, Earth, because if you're not aware or cognizant or conscious of this conversation of the body being a temple and what a temple means, number one, so lack of awareness. Number two, if you're of the belief that because you subscribe to a certain religion and you have accepted some intermediary as your Lord and Savior, and subconsciously you said, I ain't got to worry about that stuff because so-and-so got me. You know, Jesus Cristo got me. I ain't got to. Then you don't take a personal accountability for that restoration. You don't take a personal accountability for the desecration of the body. All right. So we're talking about awareness and then ownership. Because ignorance isn't bliss in this context. I won't go into too personal of details about other people in my household, but and I'm not even going to single that person out, because there's multiple people that, including myself, where we are literally killing ourselves. We are literally killing ourselves. At the same time, we hashtag self-love. At the same time, we hashtag my body is a temple. At the same time, we hashtag I love me some me. And this conversation caused to question all those cliches and all those hashtags. And even in my own consciousness, I'm like, it's not a guilt fest. This isn't about right or wrong. We don't operate in that domain. This is about consciousness. And some of the pleasures that I partake in, that I was just like, oh, you know, this is my gift to myself at the end of a week. I'm gonna smoke this, got my cigars, got my hookah, you know, got my my yak. You know what I mean? As a treat, as a gift to myself. That's unconscionable. Like there's no there's no light there. There's no awareness there that to give back to me, I take from my body functioning at its optimal form. I take from, and I go to sleep behind the wheel, inside of the notion that my body is the dwelling of the Most High, and that my life is a living epistle, a praise or a worship. You know, the fulfillment. And let me be more specific from my chief brother, that me fulfilling my purpose as I was commissioned or designed to do, that is a worship. That is the only life of worship, is a life of purpose.
And that treating yourself is what I was getting at, you know, earlier. Like treating yourself in 22 is not treating yourself, you know, like back in the day. Treating yourself in 2022 is on some unconscious joint. You know what I mean? You know, just because you have the amenities and the capital to enjoy certain so-called luxuries doesn't mean that it's really a luxury. Because ultimately what you're doing is a disservice to the body, because you're impacting the lungs, you're impacting your heart rate, you know, with these vices, right? And to what you said, Earth, you know, it's true. From a physical standpoint, to restore the body, you have to detox the body. You have to cleanse the body. there are certain rituals, spiritual or religious rituals that actually people perform to actually cleanse and reconsecrate the body and the mind. And then they make another commitment moving forward. So you talk about baptism, you talk about all sorts of rituals. I mean, you could talk about it more than I can, but I just wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Right. Reason I say it like that because I'm thinking that you have these other rituals in place. However, what's the frequency of it in comparison to the desecration of your body? Just because someone, quote unquote, gets baptized, that's not the end all. And I'm not saying you're saying this. That's not the end all, be all. But many of us walk through life as though it is, as though the work is done, and it's considered it's not.
Yeah, it's never done. It's a lifestyle. It's a pathway. It's a life way.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So anybody else got anything else before I move on? Because this is this next
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
The comments. So I want to pull this one from Moya Fire.
Mhm.
You're our resident comment reader. So
Moya coming to us from YouTube. Thanks for rocking with us, Moya. You always here. You're always contributing. So this is Moya's POV. The idea of sacredness was introduced by religion. Tradition outside of religion gives no validity to sacredness. Sacred is not interchangeable with value or to put value to.
What do you think about that? It's hot.
I'm not even smart enough to understand that.
I think that the concept or the ideology of sacredness existed before religion was created.
Okay, how was that?
So if we study the world's religions in their genesis, then if we rock with Moya's comment as absolute truth, then there was no concept that existed on the earth that regarded anything as sacred until religion was created. And I'm just saying that we have artifacts, relics, things of that nature to tell us, to teach us that things were regarded as sacred before religion was formalized or organized in a way that was documented and taken out into the world.
Okay.
Like Therese, if I'm saying that right.
Yeah, Therese.
Says it, you know.
Oh.
Yeah, go ahead, bro.
So the thing is, a question: are you taking the first sentence, or are you taking both together and then looking at it?
Got to put it up again.
Yeah, there's three sentences. You want to unpack them? First sentence is this idea of sacredness was introduced by religion, period. Second sentence is tradition outside of religion gives no validity to sacredness, period. Sacred is not interchangeable with value or to put value to. 3 sentences. And
Okay, so I'm not saying that this is right or wrong or indifferent, but when you break it down, the idea of sacredness was introduced by religion. That's point number one. The most important word is tradition, not spirituality. Tradition outside of religion gives no validity to sacredness. But we have to get, she said nothing about spirituality. The word, that's something that was actually interjected. And we automatically went to spirituality. Now, spirituality, there's a concept, and it looks different depending on where you go, of whatever sacredness is. But tradition itself,
look, I think you're right. You're acknowledging that what you just said is an actual accurate observation. Or, but let me ask you this, as the chief, in your tradition that you're well steeped in and well versed in. Inside of that tradition, in your consciousness, for the things that you regard as, are there things within that tradition that you regard as sacred? Whether it's rituals, whether it's foods, animals, whether it's a group of people, i.e. the elders, are there elements within that tradition that you regard, you and your elders, now you're speaking for the elders, that you regard as sacred?
Yeah, the spiritual aspects.
Okay, let's unpack that.
Because there are aspects of traditions that are not spiritual. Tradition is at the foundation of all of it. Then everything else sits on top of that.
Isn't the reality that we're spiritual beings having a human experience foundational?
Say that one more time.
Isn't the reality that we're spiritual beings having a human experience foundational versus tradition being foundational? Because we're not traditional beings having a human experience.
Correct.
Tradition is a function of culture.
Right. But we live, what do we live out of? We live out of tradition.
Out of culture, yeah.
That's what we, but even culture itself is rooted in tradition. Tradition sits here, and then it creates culture.
So what's underneath tradition? What's the basis of tradition?
The basis of tradition is actually formulated based upon your natural environment. In the same way that whatever spirituality is formulated around your natural environment. Period. That gives rise to whatever. Because you have spirits that exist in one natural environment that don't exist in another one. So the environment itself gives rise to tradition, which gives rise to whatever the spiritual aspect is, which gives rise to culture and blah, blah, blah. All these other stuff.
Well, it look like you got something.
You're reading it incorrect. I got nothing. I'm so trying to stay awake.
And with all of this,
nobody,
I could be wrong. Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead. I thought you were done.
I hope nobody replays this and actually hears me say that I'm sleepy. But I'm like, yo, man, you guys have a head nodder here. But I think it's important that we, especially with Moya interjecting that comment. I think that was probably one of the most interesting things that happened in the show so far. Oh man. So far, are you complete with the rabbit hole that Earth went down, or you want to see him kind of go all the way to the
depths,
to the bone gristle? I mean, like,
I'm good. We could take tradition offline, maybe on our Saturday calls, and unpack that a little deeper, because there's some context that and Earth was get ready to say. To me, again, it's not about being right or wrong. It's just a conversation, and I don't know that going down to the bone gristle is imperative for this conversation on tradition.
But hold on. I mean, the elementals they're kind of getting in there. I don't know how far back we want to go, but man, and let me just speak up right now, because I'm always saying that the guys are lurking, and we have Charles Grayson representing in the comments. Charles, I want to give you a shout out, man, because you're one of the rare men who actually step up, post a comment. So I think it'd be fitting to put Charles's comment in there. If you guys, I mean, I don't want to interrupt fire what you and Earth are doing there, man. You guys are unpacking something pretty empty and meaningless, but
not to Charles.
Nah,
Charles. Chuck got questions.
All right, so let's pull up Charles' comment.
My dog CG3 from Facebook says, aren't guidelines/rules being passed down through generations? Well, let me reframe this for you, Chuck. This is for you, brother. Don't guidelines and rules being passed down through generations create traditions? Earth?
Yeah, but it's still what was there in the beginning. The beautiful thing about tradition is it's malleable, right? The beautiful thing about that is that there has to be a genesis, and everyone has to be agreeable. If not, it's not nothing to be passed down. Then, yeah, it's passed down. But people in the beginning, it starts as the tradition. If it's not, it would never be passed down from the beginning. So at its origins, it is tradition. Is what those people do. And they pass it down to subsequent generations.
And that's given by their environment. That I agree with.
Yeah.
I think my question was a little deeper in terms of that definitely gives light to where these things come from and why they are what they are. Hell, fish have tradition, plants have, things that the organisms learn over time given by their environment, or things that they, certain foods and plants and fruits that you don't eat because they're poisonous. Like somebody had to die for that to become, for that to be known.
Consider they did not.
Who? What? Consider they did not what? Die?
Consider that people did not have to die for them to know that it was poisonous.
Oh man, this is a separate wormhole here. You're saying that they knew. Are you suggesting that they knew?
There's a knowing that exists.
Right.
There's a relationship that exists. And we can, this can go really, really deep, but we'll keep it where it is, because I don't want to.
Yeah. So
yeah, well, I'm like, that's kind of perked my ears up, because I'm with Earth on that one. I mean, think about birds migrating, or you talk about going down to what you were saying, like that organism level, and then you think about birds migrating, or whales, whatever, any animal migrating, and talking incalculable distances when you come to humans outside of some vehicle where you in a car or a plane, and they just know. And I'm kind of with him, is that some of those actually die within a year. So when they make the migration, it's the first time, but something inside of them is just doing it, which is a whole weird concept. With, like, I agree that that's a whole separate, you went from rabbit holes to wormholes, but it's definitely that. So
yeah. And who was it? Danny and Saren. It's a knowing, In the same way, there's a species of bird. I don't remember what the species is, but this bird feasts on poisonous berries. Literally will feast and get just full as a tick. Now, and the berry is poisonous to that bird. The antidote to the poison is there's a rock face, and there's a mineral in the rock face, and the birds literally, once they get full as a tick, they immediately make a beeline and fly to the rock face and eat whatever mineral is there, and it neutralizes the poison. Would you say that many birds had to die in order for them to figure that out?
Yeah. I would say that those birds understand that their body's a temple.
But this particular berry is very nutritious and is poisonous at the same time.
Yeah.
There's a knowing that exists that we never consider, or very seldom, if ever, consider that knowing.
What happened to the consciousness of this knowing, right? Like, what happens to, how do we get to a place where people are ingesting fentanyl-laced drugs, right? That's running into death, right? Like, wide open, running into it. Like, so the first man or the early men and women were of this extreme innate knowing and consciousness, like the birds of the air, lilies of the field. And then at some point we just turn the lights off and we actively participate and do things that bring about our demise.
We can't say that we don't get a message that says don't do this. I remember I was a kid, grew up in South Florida, went to the beach. There was a man of war warning out, right? Man of war is a species that they're like jellyfish, you know. And it was they were floating. They're really pretty when they're floating. So when I was a kid, I didn't know what that was at all. I just remember seeing the warning. My dad was like, "Be careful," blah blah blah, and you could see them washed up on the shore. So I went out into the water, and I saw one, and it was so pretty, and I was going to grab it and touch it, and something said, "Don't touch that." It was clear as day. So I didn't have to get stung by it to know that it's poisonous. It was as clear as don't touch that. So the reason that we ignore this knowing that we have is simply because we're overstimulated. Because we're overstimulated to the point where we're bombarded with messages that says that you don't have to, you can do whatever you want to do with zero consequences. As long as it, quote, doesn't hurt anybody else. So it's easy for the mind to override all of that. We override those messages. You can't tell me that before you were going to do something that you shouldn't have done, something said, "No, don't do that." We all hear it, but it's louder when we're children. And the more knowledge we gain, the more sophisticated we become, the more intelligent, quote, 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 we become, we begin to push that voice into the background to the point where it's non-existent. And we just go off doing whatever we want to do. And we have to begin. No, go ahead.
Well, I'm with Earth on this one because I would say that the vast majority of people are numbing themselves out from something, right? So there's a lot of things that people are ignoring. So for instance, fire, you're under the weather, right? So what's the first thing that most people do when they're under the weather? Take some medicine, right? You want to get some Dayquil because you got to go to work. Well, I think that most people don't realize that the human body is a very intelligent thing, And when we get sick, the reason why we feel tired or we don't have an appetite is because the body's trying to tell you, I can't process that food right now because I got something more important going on.
Yeah.
However, what we do is we got to put something on my stomach, have to force whatever it is, as opposed to just doing what animals do, which this goes back to the knowing part. Doing what animals do, you just they kind of crawl into a hole and just just chill for days or however long it takes them to basically get over whatever it is they need to get over. And so I'm right there with Earth on this one, is that there is that knowing. However, most people are not listening to that knowing. They're pushing that knowing back somewhere else. Simply, it's just the same as if you're sick. Probably most people kind of intuitively know you probably just need to sleep, rest, probably do nothing. However, what's being fed to us is that got to work. I have deliverables, right? Can't let those deliverables go down the assembly line without me touching them and processing them. Otherwise, something's going to happen. And I would venture to say that, as Earth is saying, that knowing, we treat that the same way. We just basically know that, going back to your example, Fire, probably shouldn't smoke that, or probably shouldn't pop that pill, whatever it is that has fentanyl in it. However, they don't listen to it. They just shut that voice down. They shut the voice up. Next thing you know, they've done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so that's like one of the downsides of living in a first world country. Really, it is. It's one of the downsides, that you literally begin to ignore self on a level that you can't even imagine that you've done. Totally ignore your knowing, because all I have to do is just go pop this pill and I'll be fine, or whatever that is. So yeah, it's totally moving things aside.
I'll one up you on this one, and I want to hear what Fire and Wind think about this one. I'll one up you on that, Earth, and say not only is it the downside of living in a first world country, but it's the downside of actually being successful. Because for those who have come from a place where you really, really, truly want something, when it starts to come in, you want all that's coming to you. You want as much of that as you can get, right? It's like, hey, oh my God, here it is. And you want as much of it as that you can get. And what ends up happening is, and I've really noticed this about myself, is that I'm so all about more. And what I realize is, it goes back to what you were saying about in the, living the downside of living in a first world country. I realized that back when I was less successful, I was more at peace. Now there's just more to do. There's more, there's more plans. Oh man, this is going to lead to this. Oh, oh man, dude, this next one is going to be it. Oh my goodness. And it really seems like there's no end to it. It's almost like a drug. It's almost like a drug. Fire. When?
That's a whole show, bro.
Isn't it?
That's a whole, bro. I'm sitting here thinking about everything that you're saying in real time, and thinking about how I prioritize tasks over my own bodily needs.
Yes.
My body's a temple. Hashtag self-love.
I love you some me.
Come on, man. Wow. And it's and to your point, Water, this is what I'm unpack the first world problem, because Teresa, can you put the pronunciation of your name?
It's Therese.
It's Therese. Okay, got it. Thank you.
You want that comment that she's got?
Yeah. Here we go. Oh boy, Teresa's comment after this comment. All right, wait, how did this become a first world problem? And then she says, also define first world. Thank you, Therese. Because that's a whole show in and of itself. But what I think Water is saying is, it's frowned. I can speak up. Listen, I work for multiple Fortune 500 companies, right? In my 13-year career post NFL. It's it is most definitely frowned down upon to be somebody who doesn't get tasks complete, deliverables delivered on time. And the people in the room, the powers that be, don't give a Jimmy crack corn about how much sleep you did or didn't get, whether you have bronchitis or COVID. They don't care. Cancer. They don't care. They just need the deliverable. That's a first world problem where we prioritize deliverables, action items, or results over one's health and well-being. Like willingly, I gotta get this done. Oh, stressed out.
Oh, it's to me, if you're not stressed, like people are like, yo, he needs something to do. He needs something to do. No. Hey, give him more on his like give him more. And that's really, that's the culture. Like give him more, or like you said, he's lazy, doesn't belong. Gotta find somebody who's a go-getter.
Toxic corporate activity.
It's toxic, bro. And I'm also present to how
it's not even, but it's not even corporate though, bro. Like it's just, try to go to some auto, like, dude, because everything's in shortage right now. So go holler the plumber. HVAC, it's getting hot right now. Like, so anybody who it doesn't matter, white collar, blue collar. That's just kind of that going back. That's first world. It's not corporate. Is really what it is. That's kind of how we operate in what we're considering the first world, Therese.
You're on mute,
Fire. We can tell you talking to somebody else, just so you know. You're still on mute though, yeah.
Yeah. Lexi came in. I want to make sure she didn't, let her know I was on the show, so she's yelling on the speakerphone. I want to pivot slightly because I think we covered off body as a temple with regards to ingestion. We covered off the body as a temple with regards to physical outputs and things of that nature. But I also want to bring in the mental, emotional dynamic. Because that's something that's somewhat intangible that we haven't discussed. And I know we got like 7 minutes left, Earth, but did you have anything in your notes around, how we allow ourselves to be emotionally hijacked in this context? How we spew toxicity or negativity ourselves with how we manage our mouths or not in the energy that we put out in the world. Things like gossip and this, things like codependency and narcissism. Things like anything that is non-tangible, if you will, that is also harmful to the mind or the consciousness or the psyche.
I argue that for the most part, everything you mentioned is born out of survival. You take away the need or the desire to survive based upon whatever circumstances are. Some people gossip to survive. They do. Some people, they can't live in a world without stress. So they literally manufacture stress.
He's talking to you, Danny. He's talking to you, Danny D. Thomas.
You see that?
I saw that comment.
Oh, somebody said somebody.
Basically, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Danny said, I'm bored.
Huh?
Danny says, I'm bored without chaos and stress. I get it. That's the drama.
With a crying emoji.
Yeah.
Put that up there.
To be able to function. And we don't understand the mental toll that it takes on us, the emotional toll that it takes on us. We don't understand that. We don't understand. That's why it's difficult to get up in the morning for many people, because You just had a chaotic battle all day yesterday. Stress and whatever it was. And so, yeah, for me, it's rooted out of survival. That's what we do those things for. In order for, in it's personal survival. That's what it is. This is how I function. To function highly, you're surviving. This is how, in my mind, I function. Stress, chaos, gossip, whatever.
And you may have a high metabolism while you're young, but as you go older, those high stresses manifest themselves physically, and you gain weight. They reflect on your body.
Yeah. Or for the sake of this conversation, it reflects on your temple.
Exactly.
And we don't even have time to get into the spiritual aspect of it. There's a whole nother realm that we do not consider. I argue we don't consider it as though our lives depend on it. That's a good way to put that. And the other things we mentioned, I argue it's not considered as though our lives depend on it.
Correct.
Because we always go through life with the assumption that, oh, I'm good. I got it. I'll work it out at some point. And not understanding that we all, quote unquote, your temple has a tipping point. And you can easily reach that tipping point. And that tipping point is the probability of you coming back from the tipping point is very, very, very slim. And then if you do come back, will you be whole when you come back? Will you have to be on dialysis for the rest of your life if you come back? Will you be on high blood pressure pills for the rest of your life when you come back? That's not being whole at all. But this has been a great temple. This has been a great conversation. And I want to, I'm going to do another topic, but it's going to be not next week, of course, water. So I'm going to do another topic. It's going to address the spiritual aspect. But I may call it temple, I may call it something else. But that's the aspect that I want to address. That we can talk about the mental, we can talk about the physical, but we never consider the damage that we do to our souls. That's not a consideration. It's just not. Because no one ever says that you can damage it. That's why it's not a consideration. You can. It happens all the time. But anyway, any closing remarks from you guys? From the elements? It's a good show.
Yeah, we're not conscious of any of the ramifications or consequences of what we do, whether it be on the physical plane, a mental plane, a spiritual plane, a soul plane. We're just living. And circling back to your definition about worship, for me, worship means respect. It means reverence. It means honor. It means being loyal. And that means doing it on a consistent basis. So I share with everybody, be conscious of your body. Be conscious of, who you're with, who you're friends with, what you eat, what you consume, music-wise, TV-wise, food-wise, all of that. Because what you do with all that is how you honor yourself, how you respect yourself. And shout out to Always the Queen, the Metamorphosis, Therese, and the Wellness Queens. You know, go check those two out, because the Wellness Queens is on the physical lane, and Always the Queen, she's on the mental lane. So they can help you.
Nice. Water, you got something? Then I'll go and then we'll turn over to fire.
Nah, man, you guys went down too many rabbit holes, dude. My brain is mush. Let's give the elementals their week back.
Cool. So this is just to give everybody a heads up. In my little series, what I'm out to show you, I'm gonna say this because I want people to start thinking about it. I am out to show you that you actually operate out of language and not reality. That's what I'm going to show you at the end of the day. You operate out of language and not reality. Language is you know stuff. The reality is the impact of what you know and how you're dealing with it. That's the reality. But anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Fire. What you got for us next week, Fire?
Yeah, it's actually a controversial topic that I need to discuss with my brothers offline to see if we can go there, because there's something on my heart and I cannot remain silent or have these conversations without addressing what's happening in our world, particularly in the US of A, particularly with regards to Black people or African Americans. So I know that's a touchy subject. And before I throw it out there to the ether, I want to make sure that we have alignment as a unit, because I got questions. And that question is, why do they hate us? And what's the origin of that hate and or fear? So we'll talk offline together. In addition to that, elementals, the show next week, Wednesday, it will not be Wednesday night at the same time. I have an obligation. I have deliverables in Atlanta that will prohibit me from being available at that time. So we will also communicate to you guys through the Facebook chat, the Facebook group, when in fact the show will be. So we'll work all those logistics out. And I'll leave you with this with regards to this topic. Ignorance is not bliss. No one's coming to save you. In your soul, your body, your health, your mind, your physical is 1000% your responsibility. And while school taught us how to, prepared us to be good soldiers and to fall in line and to be inside of a groupthink paradigm and to have a relationship reality that is actually not real. Now that this conversation is not in our blind spots for some of us, we have an obligation to that knowing. So I'll leave you with that. We appreciate you all for rocking with us persistently, especially the faithful followers, man. Tell a friend to tell a friend, smash the bell, follow us on YouTube, 4 Elements United, and stay tapped into the conversation of consciousness. Peace and love.
Peace.
Next week.